Hello, my friends. It's Jill Osborne from the Interstitial Cystitis Network. I'm crossing my fingers and hoping that we got this stream set up. Okay, here, hold on. I need to move my microphones here. All right. Oh, it's been a day. It's been a day. My name is Jill Osborne. I'm the president and founder of the Interstitial Cystitis. Whoops. I need y'all to tell me if the sound is okay. Are there any issues with sound? All right. My name is Jill Osborne. I'm the president and founder of the Interstitial Cystitis Network. It is Sunday, September 7th, 2025. And I'm back, my friends. But I have laryngitis and tonsillitis. So it actually hurts to talk right now. So we're going to see how long I last. I thought I had a viral infection for 2 weeks. I've been sick for 2 weeks now because I couldn't see spots on my tonsils. And I woke up Friday morning and I couldn't talk. And I felt like I had steel wool in my throat. And I just drove myself down to urgent care. And I was at urgent care for 5 hours. And it turns out I have a pocket infection hidden behind my tonsil. So I am about 50% right now. I almost didn't do this meeting. But I have a couple of important announcements that I want to do, and we will just go from there. So anyway, I hope y'all have had a wonderful summer. It has been very weird here in California. It's been a very cold summer for us. We've all had allergies. We've all had all sorts of crazy things happening. So we have not had our normal hot summer. And now the tide is turning. The trees are starting to turn. Yes, I have put out some of my Halloween decorations in my home because I love Halloween. And my goal, I'm very different today than I was a couple of years ago, going through death and going through cancer. And now today, it's about me making myself happy. I just do things that will give me comfort and joy every day. And if that means I get to put out my pumpkins halfway through August, I'm going to do it. And in fact, I did do it. So anyway, I've been painting away and going to the county fair and just finally having a vacation after so many weeks. You guys know that I have probably done close to 1,000 of these live support group meetings. It's a lot. It's a lot. And I have come to realize that I need more breaks now that I'm a little bit older. So anyway, I have a lot of news to share today. I want to start out with really good news. I can't, damn it. Damn it, I just can't. There's this quote, if not you, who? Right? If not you, who? Our IC future depends in great part on what we're willing to do. Our IC future depends upon our willingness to speak out. Our IC future depends upon our determination to make things better for the next generation of patients. Right now, for the first time since the 1980s, we have no IC research happening in the federal government. Do you understand how devastating that is? I've been exchanging email with Dr. Quentin Clemens, who has been basically the IC research director for the MAP Research Network for many, many years now. There's nothing. Since 1980, there's nothing for us. Can you believe it? Our federal research, our National Institutes of Health has performed the vast majority of research that has gotten us where we are today. If we didn't have that federal funding, we would all be in the dark ages. with patients saying that, with doctors saying that this was all in our heads. No treatment information, no phenotypes, nothing. But because patients 40 years ago, 50 years ago, rallied together, went to the National Institutes of Health and said, would you please help us, specifically the ICA? They listened. And they have been funding ICU research ever since. Fantastic research. And it's gone. It's done. What are you willing to do about it, my friends? What are you willing to do about it? It is disgraceful what has happened to the National Institutes of Health. I read today that RFK said that there was nothing good that the NIH had done. Well, screw him. Because for the IC world, it has changed our lives for the better. And how dare you shut it down? I am outraged. Fantastic researchers now moving away. Fantastic IC teams going abroad. Why? Because they're being villainized because they're scientists. Well, you know what? I'm a scientist. In the editorial of our latest IC Optimist magazine, which is at the printer right now, I talk about this and I go through every single breakthrough federal research has given us. It has given us. Our lives are better for this research. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it, my friends? Will you join me in speaking out? Will you join me in writing your senators and your congresspersons and asking them to fund IC research? Like, we were just at the most important point in IC care. We have, I mean, what are some of the things they've done for us? Well, we have new research instruments. We have extensive urine samples. We have extensive blood samples. We have been able to follow IC patients over time. NIH research has proven that not every patient gets worse. In fact, NIH research has proven that many patients get better. NIH research has proven that many of us have viral infections. About 5%. You got Hunner's lesions. One reason why your Hunner's lesion might be coming back is you have an active Epstein-Barr. Oh, my throat's bad. Bear with me here. NIH research has proven that we have fungal infections. That we now know when we look at the urine of patients with IC, some of us have candida infections. And the more candida infection, the more candida found in your urine, the greater the bladder pain. NIH research has proven that certain therapies don't work because we don't want you to spend the rest of your life doing a treatment that has no chance in helping you. NIH research has proven that pelvic floor physical therapy is the single most effective treatment out there. Why? Because 85% of IC patients have tight pelvic floor muscles. You must speak out. Again, we have been funded since the 1980s. We have nothing now. It is gone. And that scares me. So, September is IC Awareness Month. The goal of IC Awareness Month is about improving IC care in your community. IC Awareness Month is not about me. It's not about a national organization. It's about you. It's about, are your needs being met in your community? It's about you sharing your story. It's about you speaking out, because it's not just my voice, it's every voice. My voice is a glimmer in the wind, but if we had 10,000 patients writing, 100,000 patients writing for research, can you imagine the power that would take? I mean, the power that is. And most importantly, when you vote as elections come up, you better damn well be voting for somebody who believes in medical research, because you and I have medical conditions that need research. The NIH is singularly responsible for a 30% drop in mortalities from cancer. NIH research helps every damn family in this country. And to see what's happening right now is absolutely infuriating. Okay. That's number one. And just bear with me, guys. My tonsils are just so, it's hard to talk. It's hard for me to talk right now. Okay. I have coordinated IT Awareness Month for at least the last decade or 15 years. It has gotten harder and harder for us to do it because we have fires here in California. It is September. It is fire season. And so my goal, again, is to get you to spread the word, because I don't live in your community. You do. Are you being treated well? Do doctors know about IC? Are children allowed to use the restroom in their school? If not, we have a website, icawareness.org, where you can do a lot of things. You can download our posters. You can make posters. I would love it for some of you. You know, this poster back here, this was created by a patient the very first year of our campaign. It is just like a phenomenal poster. We've had many, many posters over the years, but this is our all-time favorite. You can share our daily facts through social media. Over on icawareness.org, I have 30 daily facts, and I need your help because I'm sick. I mean, honestly, I'm just sick right now. I just can't do a lot. And so I would love it if you could go over there and take a look around, look at the posters. We've got graphics, we've got memes, we've got all sorts of things that you can share through your social media, because right now it all is social media at this point in time. Now, my theme for IC Awareness Month should have been IC research, but I didn't find out about that until last week, and we created our theme a month ago. Our press release over on the icawareness.org, and also in our magazine, the IC Optimist, that will be done this week. Actually, it's already uploaded on member pages. If you are already a member, you can go right over to our icnsales.com and look at our latest magazine. It's a gangbuster. It's 44 pages of goodness. We have a press release. You can copy that press release, print out that press release, and send it to your local paper. Our goal here is another issue that I'm deeply, deeply concerned about. And that is, we continue to have doctors telling patients and assuring patients that Elmiron is safe. And it is not safe. We are working with more and more and more patients who not only are struggling now with blindness, severe eye disease, but here's the new thing. This is the newest kind of fly in the ointment for Elmiron. It's so we had a patient who won a settlement for her eye damage, and she finally went and had her colonoscopy, and her bowel was full of polyps. Lots and lots and lots of polyps. They call them carpet polyps. And so it looks like a carpet of polyps. She's had 7 colonoscopies in 2 years. I've worked with 3 patients last week who have this. Every time they remove them, they come back and more come back. The problem is that these polyps also become highly inflamed and are diagnostic of inflammatory bowel disease, which then leads to a pretty substantial risk of cancer Thus, we now have a pretty sizable group of Elmiron users who have had their bowels removed. They've had their colons removed, colectomy. And if you talk to any of those patients like I have, believe me, they're going to be the first to say that this medication is not safe. And yet, every time we do a meeting, I find patients who are still using Elmiron. Every time we do a meeting, I hear from patients who have been assured it is safe. It is not safe. When 20%, and that's lowball, of patients run the risk of going blind, that is not safe. If it were 1%, that'd be another story, but it's roughly 20%, and that's modest. Our studies show 54% of IC patients report changes in their vision. So, my friends, I would really appreciate it if you could download our press release or copy our press release and send it to your local paper. And if you're a patient who has suffered eye damage or bowel damage, tell your story. Tell your story if you can. You can do it anonymously. You can use another name if you need to. You can ask their paper to give you another name. That's really, really, really important here. So, if not you, who? Whose job is it to speak out about IC? Whose job is it to advocate for our needs? It's us. It's you and me. I've been doing this for 31 years. I've been speaking out for 31 years. Who's coming after me, my friend? Because I'm getting close to retirement. Man, I'm thinking another 5 years. We'll see. Who's going to pick up the cause? Because isn't our job to make it easier for the next generation of patients? I would hope so. So, okay, again, bear with me. Tonsils bad. I wasn't sure how much I'd be able to talk. Hi, Donna. It's difficult. It's very difficult. Okay. I have been very, very busy, my friend. So you all know that we have our book, IC 101. It's not just a bladder disease, which is the most up-to-date book we have out there. Thank you, Donna. And you guys on YouTube, thank you. Thank you for all the stars. I really, really appreciate it. The Hi Gay Anne says, if I use topical estrogen, can I quit it if I want? Yeah, you could. But when you quit it, your skin's going to get dry again. You know, your job is to get your skin as healthy as you can. Ellie says, after 8 years of a wrong diagnosis, I have, after many years of running a large support group and tons of research, that so many people are diagnosed incorrectly, when in reality, they have a chronic UTI. Ellie. So Ellie is an advocate for the chronic UTI theory, that we all have a chronic infection. So Ellie, in May, we had our latest class for doctors on IC at the American Urology Association. That class featured Drs. Quentin Clements, Dr. Henry Lai, and most importantly, Dr. Ann Ackerman from UCLA. Dr. Ann Ackerman is a biome specialist. I think she could win the Nobel Prize for her work. And this came up at the class, and she blew you out of the water, my friend. She blew that theory out of the water, but in a different way. It's not what you think. So we have been doing biome studies now, bacterial. Man, the first bacterial studies were done by Susan Kie at the University of Maryland 30 years ago, and Jack Warren. Everybody was looking for what we call the smoking gun. Kind of like Helicobacter pylori, which was found to be the cause of stomach ulcers. So there was a doctor in Australia who actually found this elusive bacteria growing in the acid of the stomach, and everybody else said that was impossible. It was called Helicobacter pylori. And they laughed at him. They scoffed at him. They discredited him. They did not believe that any bacteria could live in the acid of the stomach. He proved them wrong. In fact, bacteria are remarkably adaptable throughout the human body. And there are indeed now well-known bacterial causes for many conditions, specifically stomach ulcers. So all of these IC researchers were looking for something like Helicobacter pylori in the bladder. Everybody's looked for it. And remember, we have much better testing now. We have next generation DNA urine testing. Never found it. Never found it. Of course, now we have phenotypes. Not everybody is the same. It is wrong to say everybody has a chronic infection. I didn't have a chronic infection. My symptoms began after I broke my tailbone when I was 13. We have phenotypes. So we have the Hunner's lesion phenotype. We have the bladder wall chemical injury, like patients who get IC from chemotherapy or from ketamine. That's not infection, that's a chemical injury to the bladder wall. We have patients who have bladder sensitivity because they have estrogen atrophy. 85% of IC patients have pelvic ischemia from very tight pelvic floor muscles. Patients who have symptoms when they sit down that get better when they stand up have pudendal neuralgia. And of course, there's a substantial group of patients who have multiple pain conditions. IC, IBS, vulvodynia, TMJ, migraines, etc. Now we know that is central nervous system dysregulation, essentially an injury to the central nervous system, usually driven by trauma. So today, we're long past the day of saying everybody has this or everybody has that. That's just absolutely not true. We have done biomarker testing, we have done biopsies, we have done just a massive amount of research looking for that elusive bacteria. Never happened. They've never found it. And again, when I started this meeting, I was talking about what the National Institutes of Health has done, because believe me, they took the best resources they could, cutting edge techniques. They couldn't find it either, but they did find virus. So when you say chronic infection, let's look beyond bacteria. The first thing we're going to look at is viral infections, because if you look at any guidelines, any of the international guidelines for IC, they all talk about excluding viral infections of the bladder wall. Viral infections are well known. Epstein-Barr, polyoma BK, polyoma JC are well known for living in the nerves near the bladder. When they get activated, they infect the bladder wall, they cause a wound, they cause hemorrhagic cystitis. Viral infections are known for bleeding a lot. Oh. Okay. Sorry, that's just tonsils. The other thing that they found, again, is fungal infections. Okay, so with the advent of next generation DNA urine testing, opened up a whole new world. And we have probably 8 or 9 studies done at research centers around the world, which found that we IC patients have essentially a normal biome, less diverse than normal, with more lactobacillus than normal. Everybody pretty much came to that same conclusion because they couldn't find the pathogen. Dr. Ackerman learned about this research, and she went, and because she's a biome specialist, she thought, well, let me check this out. Let me see what I can find. So she and her lab brought in 90 or so patients, tested their urine. Same thing, less diverse, more lactobacillus. But then she looked at the results based on age. And what she found is that patients under the age of 45 had very, very few bacteria. Patients over the age of 60, because of menopause, postmenopause, have a lot more bacteria because menopause changes our pH and our body becomes more adaptive, and it becomes a fiesta of infection in the postmenopausal woman, for lack of a better term. So that was meaningful. But then she looked at it based upon phenotype. And that's the breakthrough. Patients who are pelvic floor driven, normal. Nothing wrong with their bladder. Nothing wrong with their biome. They are healthy. When they've looked at my bladder, I've always had a healthy bladder. Always. Okay. And remember, that's 85% of IC patients. Patients who had pain, not in their bladder, but elsewhere in their pelvis, like in their vagina, were dominant in E. coli and other bacteria. Patients who were bladder-centric were dominant in something called Lactobacillus iners, I-N-E-R-S, Lactobacillus iners. Now, Lactobacillus is good, right? Yeah, no, not in this case. Lactobacillus iners was only discovered like less than 10 years ago, and they found it because they actually added blood to a culture medium, and this new lactobacillus grew on blood. Like, well, that's very weird. And it turns out this lactobacillus does not behave like a good bacteria. Good lactobacilli control fungus. They do important functions in the bladder. They nourish cells, etc. This lactobacillus acts as a pathogen. It damages cells. It's quite damaging to tissue. So now that they have found lactobacillus iners in a lot of medical conditions, they can now see that lactobacillus iners is linked to a very poor long-term outcome. If you've got bacterial vaginosis dominant with lactobacillus iners, that is a tough infection to kill. If you have a biome, so you're in the bladder wall phenotype, dominated with lactobacillus iners, you too are going to be in it for a hard ride, because this is about restoring your biome. It's about bringing in the good bacteria to defeat the bad bacteria. So the question then is, where does lactobacillus iners come from? Oops, because that's your smoking gun for a tiny percent of patients. Lactobacillus iners is an opportunistic infection that occurs after antibiotic use. It is the first lactobacillus to grow into a biome that has been destroyed by antibiotics. It multiplies very quickly, dominates the space, pushes everything else out. So, Ellie, the problem with your theory is that if you are part of the recurring UTI or chronic UTI group, you have to understand now that they are specifically saying that treating with antibiotics creates the opportunistic infection. And Dr. Ackerman at this class last summer said, I mean, literally, she closed the session by reminding every urologist attending to please stop prescribing antibiotics for flares, because you're not understanding the long-term risks over time. That using those antibiotics are damaging the biome, that are creating an opportunity for lactobacillus iners grow. And so we desperately need research now on lactobacillus iners. But of course, as I started this meeting, all the IC research has been shut down. So again, anybody who says everybody has this or every IC patient has that, they're absolutely wrong. We have a multitude of studies that have proven that there are distinct patient groups. Many of you have completely normal bladders on hydrodistension. I've always had a normal bladder. Mine was never driven by infection. But there are some of you who do have infection. A small group of patients do. And generally, these are patients who may have been exposed to a very pernicious bacteria. I was working with a patient a couple of weeks ago who had, and you guys, my senior project when I got my pharmacology degree was on the isolation of drug-resistant bacterial infections. So this is very near and dear to my heart. I read about this a lot. She had a bacteria I had never heard of. And it was a bacteria that is linked to death, which was shocking to me. How she got this really, really rare infection. And she's asking me, what is this infection? I'm like, let me look it up. My jaw dropped. It's like, whoa, I have never even seen this infection in my entire career. So it is possible that you could have recurring UTI, but it is far more important. Okay, hold on. I got a little sidetracked there. If you have 2 confirmed infections in 6 months, 3 infections in a year, you definitely have recurring UTI. Definitely. And I work with patients every week who are in this group. It's a small group, but you're there. I respect you. I understand you. I know you're frustrated. Very important that you track your infections over time by name. Don't just accept you have a bladder infection. Make sure you ask, what kind of infection is it? Is it E. coli? Is it staph? Is it strep? You got to track it over time. If it's the same bacteria over time, then you may have a super drug-resistant infection. E. coli is very, very good now at becoming extremely drug-resistant. If it is a different infection every single time, you've got E. coli once, and you've got enterococcus once, and you've got staph. I was working with a patient last week, but MRSA in her bladder. That also was a first. I've never talked to a patient who's had a MRSA infection, staph infection in their bladder. The next important question that you have to ask your doctor is there anything about my body that makes me more vulnerable to infection? And the answer is twofold. Usually, women who get into the recurring infection group are severely estrogen atrophied. That when you don't have your estrogen that helps your body produce mucus, and you don't have that mucus on your skin, bacteria basically just swim up to your bladder wall and infect it. Mucus is important. The gag layer in the bladder is very, very important. It's your fundamental defense. And if you don't have a lot of gag because you're in estrogen atrophy, it's going to be much easier to get infection. And generally, they will give you an estrogen cream to use in addition to the antibiotic to try to improve your skin health. So it's not such an easy playing field for the bacteria. But the other thing you want to ask about is there anything about my immune system that could make me vulnerable to infection? So I have a family member who's had dozens and dozens of sinus infections and bladder infections over her lifetime. Dozens. And I always thought it was because she lived on a farm and maybe there was something going on the farm that was infecting her. But it was finally got so bad, they started doing more exhaustive testing, and they found that she had a condition called CVID, not COVID. CVID is common variable immune disorder. Basically, her body had stopped making immunoglobulin G, IgG, which again plays an important role in your ability to fight off infection. This condition, CVID, is either age-related or associated with strong chemical exposures. And we now think that it was exposure to pesticides on the farm that probably triggered this. And so she has to get immune injections every month to boost her immune system. And this also is where something like lactoferrin, where's my lactoferrin? What I do with it? Oh, it's in the other room. lactoferrin as a supplement, we have research that proves that lactoferrin boosts your immune system and can help fight off recurring infections, and also can make red inflamed bladders pink and healthy because, again, it boosts the immune system. So that would be something else. So anyway, that's my thought on your theory, Ellie. It's like I have to force my voice across my swollen tonsils. The doctor at urgent care, I didn't know it's a bacterial infection. I just thought it was a virus. And she looked and she went, "Oh, yes, you have a substantial infection back here." And then she was looking at my lymph nodes. She goes, "Yeah, your lymph nodes are quite swollen." Like, I had to have been exposed to it at my gym. I'm annoyed. I'm just annoyed. It's been 2 weeks of this now. Okay. So I have been writing like a beast. So the first thing that we did is our new IC 101 flare guide, our guide to managing IC flares. If you're an ICN member, I think a champion member, you already have this. This is on your member page. This is now available in the IC Network shop as a PDF file. It's I do not like my first print run. I think my first print run, they made a mistake. So I don't know if I'm going to sell these guides. I think I want to redo part of it. But anyway, this is an expanded version of the smaller flare guide that we did in our magazine last spring. And so we talk about bladder wall flares, pelvic floor flares, stress flares, vulvodynia flares, rectal flares, pelvic neuralgia flares. Dr. Robert Eckenberg, our nation's leading pelvic pain specialist, wrote our foreword. He sent me an email and he just really applauded me for doing this. So, for example, in our pelvic floor flare section, we have all the exercises that you can do to relax your muscles, etc., etc. So we got the pelvic neuralgia flare for those of you who have pain when you sit down. As an example, I was working with a patient not long ago whose feet go numb when she flares. Her feet go numb. And that's because her muscles get so tight, they squeeze the nerves that go down to the bottom of her feet. And I was working with a patient again last week whose feet tingle when she has flares. Again, that's a perfect example of pudendal neuralgia. What to do when you have a stress flare. Menstrual flares. Urethral flares. What do you do when you have a flare and your urethra is screaming at you? A vulvodynia flare and a rectal flare. Because, hello, every single one of us have had moments when our bum feels like there's a little piece of cactus right there. Sex flares, allergy flares. And then we have a lot of articles on like how to prevent flares while you're driving. Why using antibiotics for flares is not the brightest idea. Smoking, did you know that smoking can cause flares, but so can vaping? How to differentiate between a UTI and a pelvic floor flare or other flares. How to sleep better during flares. How to reduce your risk of flares during the holidays, because why do they always happen during the holidays? And why do they always happen on Friday? How your spouse can help you when you're having flares, etc. So, it's in the IC Network shop under IC 101. It has a different cover than this. This is one of our working covers. It's called the Guide to Managing IC Flares. Our next one is Guide to the IC Diet. Our third one is going to be Guide to Managing Pain. And the one I'm working on right now that I'm really quite happy about is a brand new medical journal. So if you're newly diagnosed and you're just not sure what to do next, we're going to have this whole medical journal that will walk you through every step. It will help you track all your appointments, prepare for all appointments, all that sort of stuff. So I hope to be done with this soon. It's pretty cool. I was talking to Robert Evans about it. And, you know, it's nice to be able to make things that nobody's ever made before, you know. Now, speaking of Robert Evans at Wake Forest University, who has been our top IC doctor in the United States for decades, he is beloved. He is a beloved figure in the IC world. Has been out on disability since January because he developed a blood clotting disorder. He has blood clots moving through his legs and arms, and he cannot operate. He cannot see patients right now because walking hurts him so much and standing hurts him so much. So the tragedy of this condition is that normally it's an early sign of very severe cancer, like pancreatic cancer. They have found no cancer. And he has had cystis, he has had everything. He's had all the diagnostic tests most of us have had. They've looked for cancer everywhere. They have not found cancer in him. So they now think it is probably COVID related. That COVID is a virus that attacks blood vessels, and COVID is known for causing blood clots. So their best guess now is it's related to COVID or the COVID vax, that something happened last fall that began this condition for him. So he wanted me to tell you, he's wanted me to be very upfront about what's happening. He has no problem with me sharing intimate details of what's happening with his health because he wants his patients to know that he's doing everything he can to get back to work. He wants to be back at work. He is a lovely, kind man. We had a wonderful, long conversation this week. What else is going on? Our magazine is almost done. I will have a copy of it next Sunday, knock on wood, that you can see it. The IC Optimist. If you're already a member, just go to your member page over in our shop, and you can already download it. But I don't have the print version yet. I also do want you to know that tariffs have hit the price of paper. And it is now cost twice as much to print up a magazine. Used to be $2, now it's like $4.50 to print up a magazine. So prices are going up, as they are across the economy right now. Donna says, blessing. Donna says Donna's caring for her mom who has stomach cancer. Oh, honey, huh? I wish you the best, girl. I know that's a hard, hard job. Yeah. All right, let's go back to Facebook here. Ruth, thank you for the 20 stars and another 20 stars. Joanne says, sorry, your tonsils are causing so much pain. I am on amoxicillin. They wanted to put me on a couple of other meds that are known for causing heart arrhythmias. And since my heart is very prone to it, I went back to the gold standard of amoxicillin, which we know I can take. We will cross our fingers and hope it helps. I'm on day 2. Gay says, we as IC patients need to educate our doctors. Yes. Lisa, thank you so much for 500 stars. And that's Lisa Converse. Now, Lisa, thank you for the 250 stars. Oh, honey, thank you so much. Hi, Peggy. Christy says, hope you had a wonderful time off. I was having a great time until I got tonsillitis. Lori says, did you say Dr. Ackerman does bio studies? Yes, and Lenore Ackerman. She is the one who's leading the charge for the IC biome work. Peggy says, what does STARS mean? It means that patients have made a small donation. It's a small but very, very meaningful donation. And you can do that through Facebook. Or you can just come on over to the IC Network if you find these meetings helpful. And it would be great if you became a member, because that's where you're going to get my best work, which is the IC Optimist magazine. Lori says, how can chronic yeast infections affect the bladder? Because yeast can live in the bladder, honey. If yeast is inside the bladder itself, it is agonizing. And I know this because I had a drug-resistant candida infection for 2 years after doing long-term antibiotics, which we all did 25 years ago. And I cooked myself up a wicked drug-resistant candida glabrata infection, and it took us 2 years to kill that sucker. And I will tell you, having candida in the urine, it brings pain to a whole new level. I was bawling my eyes out when the infection was active. And then we get the infection controlled, and then I would eat something sweet. The candida grew every time I did ice cream. And it took, a little slow here. It probably took me 6 months to figure out that ice cream was triggering it, because yeast needs sugar to grow. So if you eat something that's sugary, it's going to grow. Jeannie said, I've recently discovered that cystitis can be caused by viruses. Absolutely, it can. The crazy part is that I remember I saw in the European guidelines for IC that they specifically asked doctors to rule out viral infections before making a diagnosis of IC. And so I emailed one of my colleagues there, and I went, okay, so you're actually looking for virus, but what do you do when you find it? And her answer was, nothing. We don't really know what to do for a viral infection. Now we have some early studies that look for virus. And then when they find virus, they give that patient an antiviral. And the early research from that is showing that when you use an antiviral, the virus goes into, when the virus basically disappears for a period of time. The problem is that once you have a virus, you have a virus. It just gets quiet. It becomes latent. Viruses live on nerves. And so this is why so many of us will get canker sores and herpes outbreaks during periods of intense stress, because the virus is living there on the nerve. And when the nerve gets all funky, then the virus goes, oh, great time to turn on and give this person even more pain. I had a giant virus on the roof of my mouth earlier this week, because I was sucking on hard cough drops and I cut the roof of my mouth. And this sucker was, I don't know, it's like this big. I mean, like the diameter of a pencil eraser. Oh, that hurts so much. This is when you gargle with super lysine, and it cuts the infection down very, very quickly. Lori says, oh my gosh, all IC research has been canceled. It just expired, and there's nothing now. The MAP Research Network did its final publication, I think, last year. There's nothing there. It's empty. It's an empty vessel. There's nothing to be had, and that is confirmed by the guy who ran the IC research program. Jeannie said, most recently the COVID virus, before it was Epstein-Barr. We're not finding a lot of live COVID in the bladder in IC patients, but they have found live COVID in the bladder of patients who are very ill with COVID. I'm not aware of any research that has linked the COVID virus to IC at all. They call it COVID cystitis. Judy said, my doctor told me eating foods high in oxalates can cause a UTI and damage the bladder wall. Well, oxalates are sharp crystals, and they certainly have been linked to a little bit more irritation, especially for vulvodynia. And so reducing your oxalates, if you're somebody who's oxalate sensitive, makes sense. Oxalates are a crystal found in kidney stones. They're very sharp, and they cut the bladder when they're crossing through the bladder. So removing foods that are high in oxalates like spinach and chocolate and berries, not a bad idea if you're sensitive. I'm not sensitive to oxalate. Ooh, the butterfly. Kylie said her feet do the same thing. They tingle. Yep. Hi, Sue. Thank you so much for the 50 stars. Lisa is having a cystectomy on Thursday. You're ready. Lisa is having her bladder removed on Thursday. Wow, girl. I truly wish you the best of luck. Now, for anybody watching, cystectomy is rarely done for IC, but it is done. The best candidates for cystectomy are patients who have bladders that have been profoundly damaged. They are shrunken, they are fibrotic, they're often, remember, your bladder is basically like a balloon. It's small, and then when it fills up, it expands, and then it's small and expands, right? That's how the bladder works. But if you have a lot of scar tissue or your bladder has been very, very diseased, it loses its ability to expand. So what happens is it gets thick and fibrotic. It's got fibrosis. And so now we've got somebody, instead of being able to hold 600 or 800 or 1,000 cc's in their bladder, can only hold 50 cc's in their bladder. And these are the patients who are often suggested for either a bladder augmentation, where you can expand the bladder with a little piece of bowel, or cystectomy to remove the bladder. But now in our guidelines, we have kind of new, clear guidelines on who would be considered a good candidate for bladder removal. And pretty much it says the best candidates are patients with Hunner's lesions that are not responding to therapy, who do not have pain outside of the bladder. Their pain is entirely bladder centric. You know, the funny thing is, if you look at my tonsils, they don't look that bad right now, but man, it's hard to talk. Lisa says she donates because Jill helps me out with these sessions. Yes. I try. Larissa says, I have Candida glabrata also, my gyne specialist. She's supposed to use azovaginal. How do they test the bladder for it? She found my pelvic exam. Also, I have a chest breakout that won't go away. Help. Okay, so Larissa, the biggest thing to remember about Candida is that it needs sugar to grow. So a book that became my Bible was a book called The Yeast Connection, which talked very specifically about how our modern day diet is very bad at feeding fungal infections and allowing them to go out of control. Like, for example, eating a bowl of pasta is equivalent to eating like 3 Snickers bars. So the first thing I did is I just deliberately tried to remove all sweets. No dairy, nothing with milk sugar, no regular sugar, no sweetened drinks, anything. And of course, when you're in that amount of pain, you will do anything. It is so easy to stop something because I don't want to live with that pain anymore. That pain was rough. And then we did kind of extended courses of diflucan. You know, the antifungal medication diflucan, your doctor will say, hey, just take 1 or 2 pills and you'll kill it. Well, if you look at the details of the drug information sheet, it actually says that there are some fungal infections that require much more aggressive therapy. So I had to do diflucan every day for 7 or 8 days at very high levels, like liver toxicity levels. And we did that 3 times. And that was finally what killed it. But it was a journey, my friend. And so I truly wish you the best. Also using a antifungal cream like nystatin on the vulva to make sure that there's no fungal infections living on the skin on the outside, and a nystatin cream there. It might be reasonable, Larissa, to have a next generation DNA test to see if they can identify any drug resistance genes and to give you a much better recommendation on what antifungal might kill it. Candida glabrata is a tough little candida infection. Sue says, love you, trauma visualizing, working great. Excellent. Rebecca said, second UTI, this one in almost a month on 2 weeks of antibiotics. Just got approved to laser and inject steroids in my Hunter's lesions. Excellent, girl. That's excellent. Let's get those Hunter's lesions treated. Now y'all know that we just had this massive Powerball, $1.6 billion or $1.8 billion. And two people won. Somebody in Texas and somebody in another state are going to split the pot. I was having this fantasy of what I would do with that money. And aside from creating trust funds for family members, right? So people have care when they get older. I'm not going to buy yachts and stuff like that. I'm just not that kind of person. I want to use, if I come into money, I want to use it to help other people. And so some of my fantasies, for example, is I want to buy an apartment complex for patients who are alone, who have pain, or who have cancer, to provide a home for people who do not have a lot of support. That's one of my causes. But Hunter's lesions are becoming my new cause, because I don't think, in fact, I just emailed one of my peer over in Europe, Jane, who is a font of knowledge when it comes to IC, and I was asking her where they're, because I think we need to phenotype Hunter's lesions now. I think Hunter's lesions also fall into groups. I mean, one group of Hunter's lesion patients are the viral infections. Another group of Hunter's lesion patients are the ligament posterior fornix syndrome. I think that there might be an autoimmune subset for some patients with Hunter's lesions. Man, I just love to be able to put $50 million into just understanding lesions. Research is expensive, but it has to happen. Okay. Wow, I have made it an hour. Wow. I didn't think I was going to make it 30 minutes. Okay, so here's the deal, my friends. I am not doing well. I can barely talk here. So I didn't expect this meeting to last a long time. Hopefully next week I will have more. Hopefully next week I will be better. I will be here. I'm normally here as long as you have questions. But so I'm going to give you guys, I'm going to throw it out to you. I am happy to try a little bit more, maybe another half hour. If you have questions, I'm happy to take them. Otherwise, the thing, you know what I'd really love to do? Hi, Christy. Hold on a sec. You know what I really want to do is I want to read you. So over at icawareness.org, which is our awareness website, can I type? Yes, I can type. I have a press release that you can send out. And I want to read you the press release for this year. not that long. It's just 2 pages. And again, our goal is to try to educate doctors using our hands and our voices to educate doctors about saving the eyesight of patients who are using Elmiron, because we have newly diagnosed patients who are being prescribed Elmiron right now. And the other harsh reality is that Elmiron is still in widespread use in Europe. It's like the first therapy they recommend. And it's like, why? Like, seriously, how many research studies do you need to show that it damages eyesight? We now have dozens of research studies, and yet it's still being widely prescribed. I do not understand. So let me just read this to you. A growing number of research and case studies have linked pentosan polysulfate, brand name Elmiron, the only FDA-approved oral medication for IC, to retinal damage, blindness, and most recently, inflammatory bowel disease. Quote, "It is stunning that some neurologists continue to assure patients this medication is safe. Multiple studies have found that retinal damage continues to progress even after stopping the medication," end quote, offered Jill Osborne, founder of the IC Network. A recent investigative report by the Lever has raised critical questions about the original approval of Elmiron. The first new drug application was submitted to the FDA in 1991. It was denied twice by the FDA. Their specific concern was that only the patent holder appeared to show success using the medication. FDA staff wrote, quote, "So far, their data shows that only one physician can use Elmiron. The results from the other physicians do not show improvement." They requested a new study to get a better assessment of its safety and effectiveness. Instead, the pharmaceutical company provided compassionate use data, which led to its approval in 1996. A staggering 18 years later, the aftermarket follow-up study showed that this medication performed no better than placebo. Dr. Curtis Nickel, the lead investigator in that study, said, quote, "I thought the next day it would be over for Elmiron. The doctors would stop prescribing it. The FDA would order it off the market." Yet it is still in the market today, with an estimated 20% of users now reporting retinal disease. An association between pentosan and bowel symptoms has also been well documented, with published case and research studies reporting the onset of bowel symptoms after starting pentosan polysulfate, which then improved after stopping the medication. So, okay, guys. So, I mean, we've known from day one, literally. I mean, I was the support group leader when Elmiron was approved in 96, that some patients got diarrhea. We knew that. They warned us about that. They told us that it was from the capsule, and they told patients to take it out of the capsule and the diarrhea would go away. I can't remember who told me that, but I know that we were all told that back in 1996, 1997, 1998, that when the patient told us they had diarrhea from Elmiron, to take it out of the capsule. Hold on. Researchers at the MRI Institute have released their latest study, which demonstrates a novel association between exposure to pentosan and what they suggest is, quote, "a possible drug-induced cholopathy causing GI symptoms." Among 13 patients in their study with a high cumulative exposure, 9 were diagnosed with inflammatory bowel disease after beginning pentosan treatment, and 2 required removal of their colon for dysplasia. They concluded, quote, "Similar to our findings with pentosan-associated retinal disease, this pentosan-associated cholopathy appears to manifest after long-term use. Most of these patients had their symptoms subside after stopping the medication." So that's also really, really important here, because you know that people who love the medication are going to say it's something else. But the thing is we've got a lot of published, well, a lot might not be the right word. We've got published case studies from many research centers that describe patients who have developed this horrific bowel symptoms after starting the medication. And when they stop the medication, their symptoms go away. So if there was ever a good indicator, and for lack of a better term, proof that the medication is linked, it's like, okay, if you stop the medication, the symptom goes away, then maybe the medication is causing it in the first place. Quote, these are not insubstantial adverse events. Patients want more information on how this medication was approved and, more importantly, who is taking responsibility for monitoring its safety data. Most have said they would have never agreed to take it had they known the risk to their vision and bowel health. So for the 2025 IC Awareness Month campaign, we are asking patients to share this information with their doctors. The AUA guidelines for IC encourage doctors to discuss the risks and benefits of this medication with their patients. Sadly, some patients have reported that they were not informed of these risks. One patient recently said she was assured by her urologist that the medication was safe. We also encourage patients who have suffered eye and bowel damage to share their experience with their congressperson and senators and to request a formal review by the FDA of its safety and effectiveness. And I do think that's what we need. We need a hearing, an FDA investigation to really take a good, fresh look at this. Janelle said, I have a friend who gets blood once in a while in her urine. She wanted me to ask the question. It doesn't always come just once in a while. I think she's been on antibiotics. Well, blood in the urine is something that we have to take seriously, especially if it's a visible blood in the urine. If it's something that she sees with her eyes as compared to microscopic, we have to figure out what's bleeding. So in many cases, that blood can be from an active Hunner's lesion. It can be from an infection. But blood in the urine is also an early sign of bladder cancer. And so they can do something called a urine cytology test, which is just a blood test to look for cancer markers to see if there might be anything going on there, especially if she was a smoker, because smoking is the number one cause of bladder cancer. My attitude is this. If I'm scared, if I'm in pain, if there's something happening that I don't understand, I go and ask the question. I go to an expert and say, could you please help me? I am not interested in anybody guessing anymore. Like, I guessed for 10 days that I had a viral infection of my tonsils. And it just got so bad Friday morning that I felt like I couldn't breathe well. And I just didn't put any makeup on. I just got in my car and went to urgent care. And my assumption that I had a viral infection was wrong. I have a wicked bacterial infection that I let go for 10 days. I should have been at the doctor a week ago. My fault. So I kind of defeated my own rule here. I would tell her, Janelle, that she should talk to her doctor about it. And I think that it's very, very important that they look in her bladder to see if they can figure out what's bleeding. I was working with a patient like 2 weeks ago who bleeds every day in her bladder. Every day she sees blood in her urine. And it's like, what have you done about it? And she said, well, has anybody looked in your bladder yet? And she said, no. And I'm like, don't you think it's time? That's so unusual. That is not common in IC to see a lot of blood in your urine. And I sent her off to her urologist, and it's going to be very interesting to see what they find. Cindy said, I have retinal damage in both eyes and the ulcerative colitis. Okay, so Cindy, you in particular. Cindy, listen, if you're not a member of the IC Network, would you email me? My email is icnetwork@mac.com. I will send you our latest magazine, which has a very long section on this, along with a sample letter that you can use to send to your congressperson. and your senator, and your doctors. Because, girl, listen, we have got to speak out. It is heartbreaking, the number of patients who have both conditions. And I have patients who have bad eyes who have had colectomies. I have another patient who we're going to set up a special support group and a special website for patients who have the retinal damage or the bowel damage, because as I was talking with her a couple of weeks ago, she was incredibly despondent, very angry, very, very upset. And it just kind of dawned on both of us that you have special needs and we need to try to fill that need. You need a support. You need your own support opportunity, because the anger is real and we can't let the anger consume us. We have to use our voice to speak out to make sure that this doesn't happen to other people. You know, Janelle says, what causes microscopic blood in the urine? That's easy. If your bladder's irritated, let's say you were drinking Mountain Dew, this is working with a patient last week, or just started drinking Mountain Dew, is having terrible bladder symptoms. Hello? Especially if you're older and you're in estrogen atrophy, the last thing you want to do is put a very strong acid in your bladder. What happens is the bladder wall gets very irritated, and your bladder wall signals your immune system, help me, help me, help me. There's something wrong. And your immune system sends white blood cells to your bladder wall to find the threat and kill the threat. So your little army moves through your blood vessels up into your bladder wall. But how do they get out of the bladder wall and into the tissue? The capillaries open and release them. And so what happens is the capillaries, the tiny, tiny capillaries right at the surface of your bladder wall, open and they release white blood cells and they release red blood cells. And that's the source of the microscopic blood. Marlia says, you always help us. Try Manuka honey from New Zealand. You know, girl, I ran out. I know, you know what happened is I gave my Manuka honey to my brother-in-law who is very sick, and I don't have any. And I am going to go down to the store after we're done and go buy some Manuka honey. I am doing medicine balm herbal teas, which are hot water with a little tiny bit of lemonade. Now I can do lemonade because I have a healthy bladder. It's my muscles that are the problem. With a little bit of mint tea and honey and another herbal tea, and that's what I've been living on. Christine said, I did develop IBS-like symptoms 20 years ago when I took Elmiron, but it did help my IC symptoms. Went to a GI specialist, had a colonoscopy. They never said anything about it being due to Elmiron. I discontinued it myself after 10 years. And guess what? My GI symptoms resolved. Exactly. You know, and the hysterical thing is that it's like, it's so obvious. If you stop the medication and your symptoms go away, hello? I mean, come on, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that the medication is causing the symptom. And yet there are still people out there who are like, so here's the mind blower. Here, hold on a sec. Let me open up, because I want you to, I did an article on this in our magazine that just came out. Hold on a sec. Let me just grab that real quick. So, okay, here it is. So let me go to this article real quick. Okay. So the article is called Elmiron Colonoscopies and Carpet Polyps. And I didn't I mean, we knew about the diarrhea and all that. What I didn't know is about the polyps until this patient called me and said, "Hey, you have any idea what's causing all these polyps in my colon?" And I'm like, "No, I've never heard that before." And her doctor said, "I think it's genetic. I think you have a genetic predisposition." So she had all the genetic testing done and they found nothing. Nothing. So she really thought it had to be related to Elmiron use. So, and you know, again, the level of anger is just undeniable. And she had gone over to one forum online and asked, any other Elmiron users have a bunch of polyps in their urine? And she got like a dozen people said, yeah, I didn't know it was connected. And then I emailed the lead researcher at the Emory Eye Institute that's doing this. And I said, so we now have a patient who's reporting polyp development. Have you seen this in your subset of IC patients and he said, yeah. He said, we have multiple patients reporting this. And I'm like, wow, okay, I had never heard this before. I had never heard about this crazy polyp development. And she doesn't just have polyps in her colon. She's got polyps throughout her body, that's crazy. We were learning more about that. So here's the thing. 2 years ago, right before we found out that I had breast cancer, I had launched a survey on Elmiron and bowel issues that I forgot about. I forgot about it. And because, you know, I was in a cancer world and then I had surgery and, you know, I was toast. I was incapable of focusing on anything. And I found it again like 2 months ago. I'm like, oh, I did this, didn't I? Well, I forgot. I totally forgot I had done this survey. And it's got several hundred patients reporting. And so I went through it. And 68% of the patients reported that they developed bowel symptoms while doing Elmiron. Of those 68, 70% suffered with abdominal pain and cramping. 52% had persistent diarrhea. 21% had unintended weight loss and reduced appetite. 19% had rectal bleeding. Others reported bowel urgency, bowel incontinence, swings between diarrhea and constipation, the passage of mucus, gastroparesis, and other symptoms. So, you know, I just right over my head. I just was too busy dealing with trying to save my life. But here's the thing, and this is what I wrote here. Oh gosh, there's just so much here that I hadn't seen before when I actually went and crunched the data. 10 patients in our survey reported the growth of polyps, with 3 reporting colectomies. 1 patient reported annual colonoscopies with precancer polyps, with every colonoscopy, sometimes 25 or more polyps found and removed, while another developed over 100 polyps in her colon and had to have her colon removed. Bowel adverse events developed quickly. Most patients reported that their symptoms began in the first year, with 23% in their second year. The longer they took the medication, the more symptoms appeared to worsen. 38% reported that their GI symptoms worsened the longer they took the Elmiron, while some had episodic symptoms. Okay. Here's the thing that shocked me. Did you know that bowel symptoms could occur while taking Elmiron, was my question. Were you told that this was a known side effect? 93% of patients were not informed of the risk of bowel issues. Similarly, patients were asked if they were advised to stop using Elmiron after their bowel symptoms began. 95% were told to continue using it. Only 5% were instructed to stop the medication. This is particularly egregious given several case studies and publications which show that stopping the medication resolved most bowel issues. It is reports of dysplasia and precancerous polyps that raise great concern. In 2022, researchers from the Oregon Health and Science University found that 60% of patients using Elmiron who developed dysplasia had to have their colons removed. Their study found that Elmiron users have a significantly higher rates of dysplasia at 33% when compared to the 4% found in patients with inflammatory bowel disease. The FDA adverse event reporting system has more than 800 reports of gastrointestinal adverse events, 12 of whom report precancerous lesions in the past 2 years. It is unconscionable for any provider to fail to warn patients that this medication comes with the potential for serious adverse events. Patients have the right to know the potential risks of any medication that they are taking. Have you experienced any side effects from Elmiron use? Please report them to the FDA database, which is the only way we can track these trends over time. Crazy, right? Like I'm just stunned that all these patients who develop these bowel symptoms were told to keep taking the med. Like, what? Now that we know the longer you use it, the greater the risk of inflammatory bowel disease, the greater the risk of dysplasia, which means the greater the risk of bowel cancer. David said, is there a certain next generation test I should request? David, for you, there are 2 tests that you could do. Test number 1 would be the urine test, and test number 2 would be the semen test. So I have another gentleman who comes into our meetings. If you're here, you know I'm talking about you, but I'm not going to say your name. Severe symptoms, very, very severe, has had very, very severe IC symptoms for many, many years. Always felt better on antibiotics. When they stopped the antibiotics, he got worse. And I mean, that's, again, clearly that means something. We have to try to understand what that means. Could that be a weird, funky infection? And so David, he had both. He had a urine test and he had a semen test. And you know what? They found something rare. They actually did find a funky, unusual symptom in his semen and in his bladder. And so he is now finally getting the correct treatment. He's doing much, much better on the antibiotic. So am I against the use of antibiotics? Absolutely not. I'm using them right now as I'm talking. But you do them after you have confirmation of a test. You don't just keep taking them just in case, because there are consequences to using antibiotics, like a yeast infection, which is why I'm getting frozen yogurt every day for my lactobacillus. Hey, it works. I like cake batter flavored frozen yogurt. It's very, very low fat. Happens to have 4 different lactobacilli in it. That's what I get. A small amount. I can't do a big amount. Let me just see if there was something else in here that I should talk about real quick. I did. I talked last July, that we had learned that the wonderful Dr. Jerome Weiss had passed away. Jerome Weiss is the author of my all-time favorite book, Breaking Through Chronic Pelvic Pain. I recommend it to everybody who has muscle and nerve problems. He was the first urologist back in the 80s who saw that bladder therapies didn't work for IC patients. And he was humble enough to say, hey, it's not working. I'd like to know why it's not working. And he became a master at muscles and nerves. Here's his book right here. This much loved book. This book is insanely good, you guys. I recommend it to everybody. I think we got our last 50 copies. I don't know, now that he has passed away, we were told that the family may stop printing it. I would love to buy the rights to this book and print it up myself, but this is a fantastic educational resource for anybody with muscle issues. Anyway, you know, as I was putting our magazine together, I wanted to show you what a good man he was and how right he was. So I found, through the IC network, we've had over 100 live events in our history. We don't do a lot of them now because of COVID and just changes in technologies. But I've had the head of the National Institutes of Health. I've had almost every top IC researcher. Jerome Weiss appeared in our lecture series, and he was the first to talk about muscles. And so we did it in 1999, 26 years ago. It is perfect for today. It represents exactly what we think of IC and pelvic floor today. It's amazing how right he was, because I can remember him coming to IC meetings and urology meetings and basically being laughed at by doctors. You know, I mean, not to his face, but everybody's like, oh, that's a muscle guy. You know, no, he's not right. He's not right. And he was very persistent. And again, he was very humble, but he was very determined. And when you look, so like one of the things he talked about is he always talked about dogs wagging their tails. And how does that relate to the human experience? And he said, yes, this is the other response of the pelvic floor. The pelvic floor responds to stress. As people with IC know, stress many times will exacerbate your symptoms. The mechanism of response can be understood when you look at a dog's tail. A dog's tail mirrors their emotions. When the dog is happy, the tail is up and moving from side to side very loosely. When the dog is stressed, the tail is down and pulls between their legs. Well, the pelvic floor muscles are the tail waggers. When men and women lost their tail during evolution, they still retain the muscle structures. When we stood upright, they become supporting muscles rather than the waggers. But nonetheless, when humans are stressed, the tail pulls forward. The tailbone pushes forward or pulls forward. When it pulls forward, it compresses the organs that run through the muscles and it pulls them up against the pubic bone. Therefore, there is more tension and constriction around the urethra and the vagina. Therefore, symptoms can occur just because of muscle tension. Hold on. That's just like a little pearl of wisdom. I asked him, what do you think is the cause of IC? This was his answer. I believe that dysfunctional tender muscles of the pelvic floor stimulate nerve endings in the spinal cord that lie adjacent to the nerve endings of the bladder. The fact that the bladder and pelvic floor work in synchrony shows that there is close nerve connections. For example, when one wants to urinate, they relax muscles of the pelvic floor. When one stops urinating, they contract the muscles of the pelvic floor. So when painful stimulus from the muscles activate the bladder nerve, signals are sent backwards from the nerves into the bladder. Once that occurs, the nerve endings in the bladder release substance P and other nerve transmitters that cause mast cells to degranulate and release histamine, serotonin, and prostaglandins. All these substances can irritate the bladder wall and thin the bladder lining, creating the symptoms of IC. There are 2 studies that support this concept. Anyway, he talked about the studies. I mean, guys, he was right. And now everybody acknowledges that he was right. And so this interview is a timeless legacy of the fabulous Dr. Jerome Weiss. So again, if you're a member, you will get to read this wonderful interview. And the interview is on the IC Network website. It's in our guest lecture area. You just have to dig to find it. What else do I have in here? When rectal pain stops you in your tracks. Have you ever suffered from pelvic pain so severe you can't move for several minutes? Does it feel like it's within your rectum? You may be suffering from proctalgia fugax, a poorly understood pelvic pain condition that can strike suddenly. Proctalgia means pain near the anus or rectum, and fugax means fleeting, which describes these sudden intense moments of anal pain. 18% of the US population suffer from these. And Dr. Weiss just flat out says it's from muscle squeezing nerves. I used to have, back in my 20s when my IBS was really bad, I had many episodes of agonizing pelvic pain that I now realize were all driven by my incredibly hard, tight, concrete-like pelvic floor, which thankfully is much better now, which is why I'm better. Also, I do want to introduce 2 new product lines to you. Okay. So Femetry, you've probably seen Femetry on a couple of, and they do some pretty aggressive social media. And I've had a lot of people ask me about the Femetry line of products. So there's Femetry 1, which is basically, it's now called Flora Balance. It's basically for restoring your biome after antibiotic use. And so this is a definite need in our patient population, where we've all taken massive amounts of antibiotics. We've all had damaged biomes. I think that the idea behind this product is fantastic. The second product is Femetry 2, Bladder Daily Comfort. And this is kind of about comforting and soothing the bladder wall and the nervous system. So it's not a chondroitin-based supplement. They don't use chondroitin to coat the bladder. It has quercetin, some glucosamine, pine bark extract, a little bit of aloe, a little bit of hyaluronic acid to coat the bladder. But this is the first supplement to also contain ashwagandha. And ashwagandha is very helpful in reducing the impact of stress on the human body. So there are, I mean, this is newer. Do I think that this is specifically for IC? No, I think that this is for anybody who has a very irritated bladder. So like if you've got estrogen atrophy, if you've got chemocystitis, would be an interesting experiment to try. They're all experiments here. It's about finding what works for you. There's no way I can tell you what's going to work for you. We have to, you have to phenotype first to try to understand what's driving your symptoms, and then come up with treatments that will help those. And then Femetry 3 is like Preleaf. It just reduces acid in urine from food. So I think that these products work the best for women with estrogen atrophy, or for men and women who have taken antibiotics. The Flora 1 makes sense. The other product that I want to give a high five to is Preleaf. So in 2019, we had a research study from Europe that showed that palmitoyl ethanolamide, also known as PEA, resulted in a significant progressive reduction in pain in 87% of IC patients who used it. There are exhaustive studies with PEA for a wide variety of painful conditions, from shingles to burning mouth syndrome to surgical pain, chronic pain, acute pain. I've taken it to help me with my neuropathy from my incisions from my breast cancer, a mastectomy. So its method of action is that it physically calms nerves down. With the research that we have, with an outstanding safety profile overall, it is now what I usually will suggest to anybody who's struggling with pain and or nerve sensitivity. So we're talking pudendal neuralgia, widespread pain, sensitive skin, or just kind of pain in general. And again, the ICPEA study showed that 87% of IC patients reported a significant progressive reduction in pain over time. People ask me what I do. It's what I use. Because I have a healthy bladder, I don't need to do anything for my bladder. What I do have are tight muscles and very sensitive nerves. And so I am very invested on a daily basis in getting my nervous system as calm as it can be. I've had tremendous success with PEA. One of the things that happened to me is I developed small fiber polyneuropathy when I went through menopause. I felt like I was being poked by pins at night, and that's completely gone. So Peora was the first. I took the PEA study to Natural Approach Nutrition, and I said, can you please give us something like this based upon this IC research for the United States? Because we could not get the PEA from Europe at the time. And they created Peora PEA 500, which has excellent reviews on Amazon, like 4.5 stars or higher. This has been out for a couple of years now, but it's not just the PEA and polydatin. It also has some vitamins in it, and a little bit of calcium, a little bit of magnesium in it too. Preleaf, the company that makes that product on my wall, right? Preleaf is the most well-known supplement ever used in the IC world. Preleaf reduces the acid in urine. It is a very simple calcium supplement that has helped millions of patients eat food without flaring their bladders. So Preleaf, again, rock solid. We've known them for 30 plus years. Just incredibly well-known company. They decided to get into the PEA market, and they created Preleaf, which is a sister to Peora. But this is a direct match to what was used in the IC study. And so Preleaf is now available on Amazon. I don't have it in the IC Network shop, but it is available on Amazon. The challenge that we're having is that people think it's Preleaf and they think it's going to help them eat food. So it's got a couple of 1-star reviews on Amazon, and I've talked to those people, and they just thought it was like Preleaf that would help them eat certain foods, and it's not like that at all. It calms nerves down. So it would be very interesting. This would be a viable option to explore too. So you've got Peora and Preleaf. So when people talk about the future, what do I think the future of supplementation is in the IC world? It's PEA and it's lactoferrin. We don't just want to chase the symptoms with aloe. Aloe is not going to fix anything because the bladder is not made of aloe. And the chondroitin-based supplements, again, are about kind of calming and soothing the bladder like aloe is. But again, it doesn't necessarily fix things. We want to try to fix things. PEA fixes nerves and helps nerves get much better. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents on that. Excuse me. Oh, I shouldn't have coughed into the microphone. Sorry about that. Marlia says, what supplement would you recommend for bladder wall inflammation? Easy, lactoferrin. Lactoferrin. The IC study with lactoferrin last year 31 patients in the study. It was done by a university in Italy. 28 out of 31 had no symptoms after they used it, no flares. Red inflamed bladders became pink and healthy. Hunner's lesions virtually disappeared, but most importantly, systemic inflammation throughout the body, inflammation that they measured with blood testing, that also dropped. So lactoferrin is huge now. And a lot of patients are doing well on it, and some patients it doesn't help. You just won't know it until you try it. But the cool thing about lactoferrin is it has an excellent safety profile. It's an over-the-counter supplement, and it's not for the rest of your life. That study was basically a 4-5-month study. So we've never had red inflamed bladders become pink and healthy before. Lactoferrin is a protein found in colostrum. It is critical to our immune system. Our body makes lactoferrin. We have lactoferrin right now in our tears and our vaginal secretions. Lactoferrin plays a critical role in how our body fights off infection. As we get older, our lactoferrin levels drop and our body begins to struggle more. And so we have an exhaustive amount of research in the last 20 years where they have used lactoferrin obtained from cows through cow milk to see if that will boost our ability to fight off infection, and it does. And on the front page of the IC Network website, I have a blog that goes through all of the lactoferrin research that I found. The IC study reported no side effects. The lactoferrin that we have in the IC Network shop is lactoferrin that comes from Australia. We don't want to do a cheap lactoferrin from China or from America because our milk industry is endemic with bird flu. So the researchers themselves got lactoferrin from Australia. We get lactoferrin from Australia where there is no risk of bird flu contamination. What a lot of people don't know about what's happening right now with tariffs is that the US government has required most foreign countries to collect money on orders under $1,000. And they say they will not accept a shipment from other countries unless this has been done. Well, those other countries have said, well, then we're just not going to ship to you because they don't have the infrastructure to do it. They just do not have that infrastructure. And so Australia is one of many countries that now will not ship to the United States. The only orders that are getting through are big bulk orders. And so I place big orders. I mean, and so that's why we can get it, but I can't guarantee I'm going to have it because I do not know. It's chaos right now with tariffs. They haven't said that they're not going to ship it to me. I placed an order late last week, but they could cut us off in a heartbeat. Okay. So this is the reality of what's happening right now. Joanne says, is lactoferrin safe for those with liver disease? Well, as always, I would talk to your doctor about it, but let's go to the National Library of Medicine and let me just see if I can find. Obviously, I cannot give you medical advice. You should never just believe me. You have to do your research. But here we go. Lactoferrin prevents liver injury and fibrosis. That's a study from 2021. Lactoferrin prevents hepatic injury and fibrosis via inhibition of the NF-κB signaling in non-alcoholic steatohepatitis model. They're talking about non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And And let's just drop to the conclusion of this, because I've got the whole study right here. In the study, we examined the chemopreventative effect of lactoferrin in a specific liver model for non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Eventually, continuous inflammation leads to fibrosis and progresses to cirrhosis. It is known that 20% of NASH cases progress to liver cirrhosis. And in the present study, for the first time, the effect of lactoferrin on histological features was quantitated. Lactoferrin significantly improved steatosis in the liver, but did not affect visceral fat weight. It reduced inflammatory cytokines. Okay, that's an animal study. That's not a human study. Here's one from 2024. So that lactoferrin is a therapeutic agent for attenuating hepatic stellate cell activation in liver fibrosis. That's a study from China and Turkey. No, Taiwan and Turkey. It's another one from 24 on the preventive effects of lactoferrin on acute alcohol-induced liver injury. That is from China. Looking good. I mean, it's looking like they're finding it helpful to the liver overall. And here's a study with cardiac fibrosis. Here's a study from 2022. Lactoferrin promotes the restoration of structural and functional organization of the liver, reduces edema, shrinks something. So I would encourage you, Joanne, to Google lactoferrin liver disease. And you can look at those studies too and maybe take them to your doc. Here's one from 2010. Lactoferrin protects acetaminophen-induced liver injury. Here's one. Oh, it's a Google patent. Well, it's a patent. What is this? The patent expired. It was a patent for using lactoferrin for a liver condition, liver dysfunction and liver paralysis. Every time I read the lactoferrin research, it just impresses me so much. All right, my dudes. Rebecca, thank you for the stars. If I didn't say that earlier, much appreciated. It's time for me to bow out. Listen, I've made it almost 2 hours, but God knows if I'll even be able to talk tomorrow now. Wish me luck. Let's say a prayer for Jill tonsil so that I can actually do a meeting without hurting next week. I have to work hard to talk right now. So I think I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye. If you found this meeting helpful, please come on over to the IC Network, icnetwork.org. Please go over to IC Awareness Month. Please help us with the IC Awareness Month campaign. Your voice matters. And if you find these meetings helpful, please think about becoming a member of the IC Network so you can get our magazine, the IC Optimist, which is where I do my best work, where my team, we all do our best work in our magazine. All right. All right, my friends, thank you for your patience. I wish I could stick it out, but the throat is done. I'm going to say bye to YouTube first. Yeah.